Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM, and if you're enjoying what you're seeing on the channel at the moment, how about giving this video a like, maybe subscribing to the channel to help us grow, and perhaps even check out our Patreon. Today I'm here at an undisclosed location within the UK at a private railway for a very special event. You see, I'm here for the launch weekend of the biggest working steam locomotive in the UK, and that is something very exciting. But what's even more exciting than that is that when I turned up, I was told that a driver wasn't going to be able to make it today. And they said, by any chance, do you have your overalls with you? And I went, oh yes. So cue the music. Right, let's go do some work.
First, let's just address the rather large elephant, or rather the ginormous locomotive in the room. This is a Finnish Class HR1, with the H meaning that it's an express passenger locomotive, the R representing its axle loading, and the 1 meaning that this is the first revision. This is the first of this type of design. This is number 1016 of 1955, and this is the single largest working steam locomotive within the entirety of the UK. It is absolutely massive. Now, these never ran in the UK, particularly because it's on 5-foot gauge, broad gauge, and this is the only one that looks like this because the owner has anglicised it, including painting it this absolutely wonderful shade of green, which means it's a particularly rare thing to see one of these working, particularly over here. And they told me to light the fire.
A single rag. This is fine. I can't see anything going wrong. That is solvent. I wasn't quite expecting the That's on. Was not expecting quite the woof there as it went.
With the fire lit and the locomotive starting to come round, I was told to go and light up the narrow gauge locomotives running on the British standard gauge. There were going to be 2 out today, including the oldest Andrew Barclay in preservation, which was Swanscombe, built in 1891 with works number 699, and Aveling and Porter number 8880 of 1917, Sir Vincent. Basically, Aveling looked at the standard locomotive design and went, no, we think we can do it better, and presented a traction engine on railway wheels. As Swanscombe was going to be offshed first, I started working on laying my fire in that first, which involved my traditional adding of wood in a very careful and thought out manner, not just chucking it into the firebox and hoping for the best, because doing that does not a good fire make. And once I'd thrown enough wood in to cover the entirety of the box, I added a little bit of cardboard on, just for good measure, got myself some rags, filled them up with paraffin, and then lit them. I added a few more rags to help spread the fire, and soon the fire had taken hold, which was good, and the locomotive started to come round back into life, and I was given a new task.
Been given a job I'm qualified to do,
which was to go and pick up more wood so we could light up Sir Vincent. We had a cursory glance inside the smoke box, and with that all being well, I was told to get on with it and lay a fire. And as soon as I'd done that, I added some paraffin to some rags, and then set fire to my paraffin-soaked rags and added them to the other combustibles inside the firebox, throwing a few more rags in there just to help the spread of the fire, and a bit of cardboard on top of that. And with that, Sir Vincent was on fire, and thankfully Swanscombe was also still on fire, so both fires were doing their job. With both engines lit up, my next job was to start the prep, which meant going back over to the Pacific, which I was pleased to see was still on fire and starting to make steam. and had a team of people working around it to clean and prepare it ready for its big reveal. So I picked up an oil can and started working on the motion, rather taken aback by the sheer scale of the machine. This is certainly the biggest thing that I have ever oiled up within the UK, and due to its much larger loading gauge, it meant that everything was on the outside. There was no having to clamber inside the frames for me, which was a rarity and a very pleasant surprise. All I was doing were the parts of the running gear that you can get from the ground, with other members of the team having got the other components that you have to climb up onto the running board to get. There were some bits I really liked, like these snapshot oil pots. I thought they were absolutely super, and eventually I got rid of the squeezy can and went and found a proper pourer, because the oil pots are just that cavernous. Now this was particularly exciting for me because this is a big, and I mean a really big, passenger locomotive, and it was an exciting change to the locomotives I normally volunteer on to go round and oil up. And frankly, it was an absolute delight. All of the oil pots were easy to get to, everything was accessible, and most importantly, I didn't have to bend down or clamber underneath, it was just all there. It even had lights underneath the running boards to illuminate the motion. I mean, this was a later design of steam locomotive, but it's nice to have those little mod cons. And having completed my oiling up, I went back over to the two standard gauge locomotives to see how they were getting on, and was relieved to see that they were both still burning away and generating steam. Swanscombe had already been oiled up, so I turned my attention to Sir Vincent and started working on the motion to get that ready to go. The bottom end is all on grease cup oilers, so all I had to do was give them a twist to force some of that grease into the bearings, and then it was clamber up on top and start working through the motion. And as weird as it looks, it's actually much better than having to go underneath, because everything is on top and totally accessible. It really is far more akin to a traction engine than it is a railway locomotive. It's a very, very weird beastie. But soon I'd finished oiling up the forward motion and had to stick my head inside the cab to get to the eccentrics and the big ends, because where else would you put them but inside the cab, so that whilst you're going along, it will spray the oil everywhere inside the cab, including over you. And of course, having a cab in the way means that some of the components are a bit more of a challenge to reach. But soon I completed that and gave Swanscombe a final quick clean before both locomotives were due to move off shed and to go and get some coal. And as soon as we were sufficiently out of the way, Sir Vincent pulled off shed and followed us down the line. And as the convoy set off, I hopped off because I'd been asked to do something else, and that was to go and light up the Kemner traction engine. Now, if you haven't heard of Kemner, that's because it's a German brand, and this one is one of only two in the UK, making it a fairly rare thing to see. With that, I laid my fire with the normal amount of care and attention that I put into lighting a fire. Then I lit up my rags and added it to the fire, adding a cursory round of coal on top to help get the thing burning. And and feeling satisfied that the thing was indeed alight, I set about doing some of the oiling up. Now, funnily enough, this was pretty similar to what I'd been doing on Sir Vincent, so it didn't take too long to go through everything, add some oil to some of the really cool pots that have gauges on them, and get the thing happy and ready to go. But that wasn't the end of my jobs, and whilst the little engine sat there smoking away generating steam, I was sent off to do the shunt to move the little Barclay diesel off from its train and then put it into the shed road so it was out the way. Having got that safely out of the way, I went to join the other two locomotives and help with the coaling up.
Now, I'm not saying that today's looking like it's going to turn out to be a very good day, but today's turning out to be a very good day.
It was, because by the time I'd got over to the guys, they'd actually coaled up, so I didn't have to help them there. So we headed on back round, which gives you the chance to see just how massive the Pacific is compared to an English industrial.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really having fun.
And I know that Sir Vincent is not the most large of machines to start off with. In fact, it's quite diminutive. But compared to the Finnish Pacific, it just looks like a toy. Or perhaps it looks like a narrow gauge locomotive compared to the standard gauge. The Pacific is just ridiculously big. And speaking of the Pacific, it was now starting to come round into steam. So next, it was time to put Sir Vincent back on shed, and then we could put the Barclay onto the front of the train, and then we would be ready to begin. And once we were safely coupled up to our train, there was nothing else to do but a few last minute touches and wait for the invited guests to arrive. By now, the traction engine had steam up and was ticking over nicely, and the Pacific too was really starting to show signs of life. And as the invited guests turned up, they too were amazed by the sheer scale and size of the machine, with many of them hopping up onto the footplate to be able to have a look around the cab. But this wasn't the main excitement, no. This behemoth was about to make its first moves. And this was something that everybody, including me and the owner, were very, very excited for. Well, they're not opening. And following the successful first run, we could begin. Not only would we be offering rides on the standard gauge, but visitors would be able to ride behind the Pacific in its tender. But for now, we are about to depart with our first train with the Barclay. Having the two side by side really looked like a model next door to its full-size counterpart. It really was just a little bit silly. And as we moved ourselves clear, Lady Patricia was free to start giving rides. And this is how the next few hours played out, with the tiny little Barclay and the rather large Pacific offering rides around the private railway. As there was the option to go for a ride in the Pacific, I thought it'd be rude not to really, so I clambered aboard. We also took the opportunity to run Swanscombe the other way around the circuit so we could line it up and do a photo opportunity next door to the Pacific. And whilst Lady Patricia continued to give rides, we went and swapped the locos over. And as the Pacific departed on another run, something exciting was happening on St Vincent, because it was now my turn to take over driving. Soon we were required to do the same photo run past as Swanscombe had done, so I reversed up and got us in position and then trundled on towards the Pacific. After what felt like an entirely too shorter amount of time, Once again, we had to swap locomotives over, so I reversed Sir Vincent back into the shed road to allow Swanscombe to take the service. Although I wasn't too fussed about having to park up Sir Vincent, because I was now the acting driver on Swanscombe. Although that didn't last very long, because I got asked if I wanted to try something a little bit bigger. Yes, that's right, that's me at the controls of the Pacific, the single biggest working steam locomotive in the UK. And yes, I was rather excited. Meanwhile, whilst I'd been having the time of my life, the other guys had got Sir Vincent back out to work the last train of the day, and this was going to be a parallel run. So our first thing was to reverse up and get into position, and then we could head down together, which would mark a fitting end to the day.
So that brings us to the end of the day here at this private railway, which identity remains unknown. And it has been quite spectacular to see the single biggest working locomotive in the UK. And of course, to have a go on it has been absolutely something else. It has been incredible. I have had the most fun I have had in a very long time just to be operating and be part of the day. So a massive great thank you to the owner of this for allowing me to come and be part of it. And of course, thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think of that thing behind us, because it's just, I don't have the words. It's magnificent. And if you have enjoyed this, how about clicking on some of the other videos popping up on the screen now? Check them out. And with that, well, we've still got some shunting to do. So I'm going to have some more fun. Ta-ra.